Good evening. This is Governor Ron DeSantis from Florida with my wife and our great First Lady,
Hello.
Casey DeSantis. We're here for this online live book signing, and we're really excited about our new book, The Courage to Be Free, Florida's Blueprint for America's Revival. I'll be signing some here. I've already signed a lot of them and more times doing my signature than I think I've ever done. But we think it's a good book. You can go to DeSantisSignBook.com if you want to place an order on this. And I'm glad to be joined by the First Lady. So
Good to
thanks
see
for,
you.
yeah.
I know you've been traveling the state, so it's good to finally meet up with you. Okay, so I know people are writing in with questions, and we're waiting for people to do that. But I wanted to start while you're signing and ask you a question of my own, because I wanted to go directly to the dedication page where it says, and I love this, to Madison, Mason, and Mamie, remember to always listen to your mother, which I think is wonderful. But you realize they're not doing it.
Well, it's I did a book 10 years ago, 12 years ago. About a dozen people read it, but basically that was dedicated to Casey. And so the way I guess the conventions are, if you do it there, you got to do it to your other immediate family. There's usually the next, and so the kids were the next one. And I'm just trying to do a little bit of good fathering by telling them to listen. But I think they're doing better.
They're doing better. So Madison, who is our 6-year-old, and she is learning to read. So we're reading every night with her, her books, beginner books and what have you. But now I'm going to have her practice the dedication page. I think that's a great place to learn to start to read. Okay, so another question. This is on the next page as more people are writing in with their questions. This was the quote that you put after the dedication, and it says, "Courage is rightly considered the foremost of virtues, for upon it all others depend." So talk about why you decided to use that Winston Churchill quote as one of the first things in the book, and how that really sets the tone for the title, The Courage to Be Free.
Well, a lot of times when you're in these positions, like governor, for example, you have to do the right thing under more difficult circumstances. And I think especially when we have a lot of the nonsense that we see circulating in our country, particularly over the last few years, if you're speaking the truth and you are cutting against the grain and you're standing up to the media mob and all the other nonsense, it's not cost free. They'll come after you. They'll try to smear you. They'll attack you. They'll do whatever they can. But at the end of the day, if you have the courage of your convictions and you're willing to stand for what's right, yeah, you got to weather the storm. But there's a lot of people out there who, if you show them you've got your back, they will have your back. And I think that we've shown that here in Florida. I mean, I got elected 4 years ago by half a percentage point, 32,000 votes. And I did 4 years of being willing to lead, being willing to cut against the grain, delivering results. And we went from 32,000 vote margin to over 1.5 million vote margin in 4 years' time.
It's very heartening for me going out with you across the state and beyond. And when people are coming up with tears in their eyes, happy because you kept the state open and they were able to work and their kids were in school and they were happy. I mean, it means the world for me, as a mother, and also to watch you go fight the good fight. Okay, so Jason from Virginia wrote in. He said, "What was the most difficult part of the process of writing this book?" And you actually wrote this book, which is another
Yes.
thing.
So I think most people in office, there's assumed that they hire some ghostwriter to do it. That's not this book. This is me. But I mean, I'm governor. 2022 was a political year for us because we had the reelection campaign. And then, my wife and I, we have 3 kids, 6, 4, and 2. So we've got a lot on their plate. And I wasn't willing to say, well, I'm going to do a little less governing or a little less campaigning or a little less parenting. Like, those are my responsibilities. I got to meet them. So basically what I did, I just slept less. And so instead of getting 6 hours of sleep, sometimes I got 4 hours of sleep. If I was on traveling around the state, I'd have the computer out and I'd bang out a couple paragraphs, and I just tried to fit in what I wanted to do. Of course, you think about some of the themes that you want to discuss. You think about some of the outlines that you're going, but basically it's 11 o'clock at night till 1 in the morning. Sometimes on the weekends, I'd have some blocks of time where I'd be able to do some things if the kids were taking a nap or something. But I would say the most difficult part wasn't necessarily the substance, because I'm just talking about what we did and my approach to leadership. I would just say the most difficult thing is fitting in into a very crowded schedule, the ability to do this. And the only place I could have drawn from was just cutting down on sleep a little bit.
True. Okay, another question from Connor in Texas. Can you talk more about your love for baseball and how you were thinking about working for an MLB front office? And also, who is your favorite baseball player?
So, I played since I could walk, basically. And where I grew up in Dunedin, Florida, we had very good youth baseball. My 12 Little League team went to the Little League World Series in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. I actually was able to be at my old high school field, which was the spring training stadium for the Toronto Blue Jays, was owned by the city of Dunedin. And so that was where my high school played. So it was a really, really great opportunity. And then I ended up playing baseball 4 years at Yale, was the baseball captain my senior year. And I thought that was something I wanted to play and be a big leaguer. If I couldn't do that, I was like, maybe I can be involved on the business side or in the front office. And I think just what happened was, once I graduated college, I was still trying to figure out what I was going to do. 9/11 happened, and it kind of put me down a path to doing military service. And so that's what ended up kind of taking me away from that. My favorite player probably growing up was Ken Griffey Jr. I think if you look, that 1989 Upper Deck baseball rookie was something like we all had. And, definitely one of the best Hall of Famers of my era for sure. And now, honestly, I like these guys from the Angels, Trout and Ohtani. I mean, I thought, hopefully the Angels will do better in the future as a team. But I mean, those are two pretty doggone good players.
And not a question, but a side note. So Mason, who is our 4-year-old, they're out there doing BP practice all the time in front of the house, which I think is so great. And so he's taking up a love for baseball. And so is the littlest one too, Mamie. She really has a good swing. Okay, so the other question.
They take, I mean, the kids will
Take
do whatever they see. So when we took them to football games, particularly Mason was obsessed with football, and he got into the Jacksonville Jaguars. I tried to get him into the Bucks because I grew up in that area and I'm a Bucks fan. But honestly, the Jags have a good trajectory. They've got a young quarterback. And so I took him to the Chargers playoff game, and it was so exciting that they won. And he was interested in going. So I actually took our 6-year-old and our 4-year-old to Kansas City Arrowhead Stadium for the Jags Chiefs. It was snowing when we got there. They had never seen snow in their lives. And they're in the crowd with all the Chiefs fans. And they had a great time. But I'll tell you, after the game, he was very, very sad when the Jaguars lost. And so but that was his thing. Then more recently, I've taken him some Florida State baseball games. And now he's just like all about baseball. So when these kids see these things, then they want to do it. And very, very interested in doing all the sports, all 3 of our kids.
Okay, this one is from Mark in Virginia. And he goes, how did you and Casey meet? So I don't know if you want me to tell my version of the story or your version of the story, which actually is the same version, but you can tell.
Well, so I was stationed at Naval Station Mayport, which is a Navy base in Northeast Florida. And Casey was a police and legal reporter, a TV reporter for the main news station in Northeast Florida. And it just so happens there was this driving range where they kind of have the artificial turf, and you just kind of hit off that. And so we were just hitting balls at a driving range kind of next to each other. There was one bay in between us. There were some balls kind of left over in a bucket. She was it was behind her, so I could see right in front of me, and she's looking back, and I thought she was looking at me. And so I went over and started talking to her. It turns out she was just looking at the balls.
Yes.
And she made that clear to me in later years. But so we just started chatting, had a number, we hit the rest of the balls, and then we went out after that, and kind of the rest is history.
Yes, because prior to that, I almost literally took somebody out with an errant drive. So I needed those bucket of balls because I needed more practice, but then I happened to notice there was a very attractive young man that was a couple of rows back. And so my gain, your loss perhaps, but it's been.
Well, I tell the story in the book. So we do that and we meet, and then, okay, we're going. I was new to Mayport. I mean, I had only been on base on station for a few months. And, I was actually born in the Jacksonville area, but we moved away when I was very young. So, I was more familiar with Tampa, St. Petersburg area. So I get in my pickup truck. She gets in her little convertible. And I just like, hey, follow me. But this was pre-smartphone. So I couldn't just look up something on a map. You had, I don't even know if I probably had just like a flip phone or something.
Yes.
And so she's following me and I'm driving and I'm just like, I hope I can find something. And I hope that she doesn't, get off the path. And so I went up a couple miles and then we found a Beef O'Brady's, which isn't there anymore. We pulled into Beef O'Brady's and we just hung out there. And so it was great, but it dates you to think about kind of that was a concern, because now you would just look it up on your phone and it'd be no problem.
Yeah, it was either that, a Publix, or we got a haircut. One or the
That's
other.
right.
That was the only things that were in that little circle. Okay, this one is from Rachel from California. You graduated from Harvard and Yale and then joined the military. What called you to serve in the Navy?
Well, as I mentioned, I mean, I was going into college and leaving college was pre 9/11. It was a much different era. We were kind of the dominant superpower. We didn't seem to have much of a care in the world. I was always very interested in the military, but there just wasn't a rationale to do that when I was in college. And in fact, Yale had banned ROTC from campus, so it wasn't even feasible for me to do it. Then after 9/11, I said, look, I want to serve. And I was doing it while I was at Harvard. I didn't get my schooling paid for anything, but I was like, you know what? I can worry about that later. Let's just do it. So we did it. I ended up I was in Florida. That's where I met Casey. I ended up getting assigned to Naval Special Warfare SEAL Team 1 out in Coronado, California. We were there, trained, deployed to Iraq in 2007, and ended up getting back to Mayport. And that's when we ended up getting married, and I ended up leaving active duty. So it was great to be able to serve in the Navy. It was great to be able to wear the uniform of your country, and I was glad to be able to volunteer for that effort.
Janet from New York, she says, what do you currently or are you planning to tell your children about the United States that you love and continue to serve?
Well, I mean, what I hope to tell them as they get older is that our country is the place where you can write your own story and you can make good regardless of your circumstance. I think we've lost that a little bit over the years, and I think we need to get that back. And I think it's because we've gotten away from some of the things that have made the country great, particularly some of the founding principles that made us unique. But at the end of the day, the opportunity to be able to make the most of your God-given talent in a society in which you don't have artificial barriers, I mean, that should be what we all strive to. So hopefully we'll be able to say that. I do worry, though, about the direction that we've gone. I worry about some of the institutions that I used to know and love, about how those have gone. And so I was talking to some police officers in one of the cities that are having a lot of problems, and the police are being treated poorly. And one of the guys said, I would not want my kids to follow in my footsteps, to be a police officer. I think to myself, that's sad commentary that's the case. I think in Florida, most people, the police officers, think that they would want that because we treat them well. But we've got a lot of work to do.
And in that same vein, Andy from Maryland wrote in and said, who is your favorite founding father and why?
Oh, man.
Can you pick one?
There's a lot of good ones. I mean,
Mason?
I think it just depends kind of what you're talking about. If you're, just talking about who was the most important, I don't think there's anyone other than Washington that you can say. I mean, he was the one that kept the country together, and it was because he was a selfless leader. He had the type of civic virtue that the ancients talked about, and he was able to put the future of the republic over any personal ambition that he may have had. And you only do that for someone. You can only do that with the stature that he had and the character that he had, and it's rare that would happen. If you want to understand the American Constitution, then I think James Madison was the one that understood that the best and was kind of the architect of the Constitution. If you want somebody that just has a heck of a story and was off the charts brilliant, I think you look at Alexander Hamilton, from where he started in the British West Indies, which at that time, being born in those circumstances to an unmarried mother, you had no chance to do anything. And he ends up working for Washington. He's at the Constitutional Convention. He's the first Secretary of the Treasury. Really only in America story.
And this one on a different note, Kate from New York wrote it, and she said, I watched you take on 60 Minutes and the media and win, as we all did. How do you deal with the media? What is your approach to dealing with them?
Well, look, I mean,
media.
I think the legacy corporate media, this has happened over a number of years. I mean, they've always had an ideological bias, but I think that they've really transformed away from maybe biased fact-based journalism to partisan narrative journalism. And so they're trying to craft narratives to be able to advance their agenda, but those narratives are not necessarily grounded in facts. And in fact, those narratives sometimes are totally contrary to well-established facts. And so the 60 Minutes thing, they tried to smear me. And the problem with what they were trying to do was, I had two very well-respected Democrats that were telling them that the conspiracy theory they were peddling was totally bogus. And they explained to them everything that was going on back in that day during the COVID. And they just kept it on the cutting room floor. They plowed ahead to try to do a drive-by smear. The problem is the outcry was so negative to them that it ended up benefiting me, and it really hurt their reputation. But that's the type of thing, shows like that, they will want to take things you say and splice you to try to leave an impression other than what you were actually saying. And I think when people see that, I remember I wouldn't sit down with them because I knew that's what they would do, but they came to one of my press conferences. Any media can come. And so they asked me, and I basically just deconstructed everything. But what they did was they spliced my answer. So they took out all the parts where I'm showing that what they're saying is false. And so what people did after they aired the program, they did what I actually said versus 60 Minutes splice. And the thing is, even people that weren't supporters of mine got frustrated with it because it's just a fundamental sense of fairness. You don't take somebody, splice them, and then do that to try to advance an agenda. But at the end of the day, what I found is they get so carried away in the narratives that a lot of times, they don't have a very good grounding in the facts, and they think that if they just repeat the narrative long enough that people will believe it. Some might, but I think most people understand the drill. They understand what's going on. And think about it. I won by 32,000 votes 4 years ago. I won by 1.5 million votes in November. And I did that in the teeth of all of this partisan media and these narratives. And there's no way I would have been able to do that if people actually believed everything that they're shoveling out nowadays. So I think they've lost a lot of credibility because people just want to know the facts and they want to be able to make their own judgments. They don't want some legacy media outlet try to force feed them some narrative to try to get them to accept it. So I think what they've done has been very counterproductive. I think that they're at the absolute low for trust. And I just treat them as partisan actors. I don't treat them as gatekeepers or as referees. I view them as just actors in the political arena who have a partisan agenda. And so you just deal with it.
Dan from Canada wrote in. He goes, as a high school student outside of the United States, how can I advocate for combating wokeness in my community and my school?
Well, the thing about the woke ideology is it's just at war with common sense, and it's at war with what people see in their everyday lives. And so, when they're trying to convince us that men can get pregnant, when they're trying to say that newborn babies are born racist and all these crazy things that have been shoveled out over the last few years, those are things that I think people just instinctively know are insane to be saying. But nevertheless, I think the woke ideology, what they want you to do is they want you to suspend your reason and your judgment and to just accept the narrative that they're trying to peddle without critical thinking. And so I think the more and more people just think critically about what's going on, the more and more people come to reject a lot of the wokeness that has been going on in society. And I can tell you in Florida, we say Florida is the place where woke goes to die. There's a lot of people, regardless of political party and persuasion, who just don't have a stomach for this nonsense. It's really an elite-driven phenomenon, and they're trying to jam it down society's throats from all these different institutions. And all you got to do is say no. and just speak the truth. And when you do that, folks will rally to what you're saying.
And this kind of leads into the next question from Austin, who wrote in and said, "What changes do you think that our education system should be made so that our next generation knows what it means to be free and how to pass it on?" I guess that leads into what you've done over the last 4 years and what's going on in this legislative session.
Well, we've worked really hard to reintroduce in a big way American civics in our schools, because if you think about it, we're going to have students that will go on to be business people, doctors, people will graduate high school. Maybe they'll end up being working in skilled labor. There's a whole bunch of different pathways people will take when they leave our K through 12 systems. But everybody who leaves it will be called upon to exercise the duty of being an American citizen in a Republican form of government. And it's our responsibility to provide them with the proper foundation to understand what it means to be an American, to understand how our Constitution is structured, to understand the Bill of Rights and all the different ways that those values have been fought for and over through key periods in American history. So we've done things like launch a speech and debate program. We're now proctoring a civics exam modeled after the citizenship exam that our immigrants have to take at the end of people's senior year. And we've worked to expand the civics curriculum in our schools. Now, this is good, solid civics. It is not the ideological stuff that you're seeing trying to be proposed in different parts of the country. This is real history, and it's important that people understand it. So we've taken that responsibility seriously, and I think it's something that's very important.
This is more of a fun question from Jeff in Oklahoma. I guess he sees you traveling the state all the time, and he knows that you get out and go to a lot of different places. So, what are some of your favorite vacation spots? Although we don't take vacations, we never stop running. But what are some of your favorite places in Florida? I guess he's looking for some recommendations when he comes and visits.
Well, I mean, the good thing is like, I mean, you can throw a dart at the state of Florida and find a place that'd probably be pretty fun to go on vacation. I would say that depending on where you're coming from in the country, it seems like different people have different favorites. So a lot of the people from the Northeast are going to southeastern Florida, places like Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach and Miami. People that come down from the Midwest, a lot of them will go down to places like Naples and Fort Myers and Sarasota. People from the Southeast, a lot of them will go to the Florida Panhandle, and we have some of the best beaches in the world that are there. And then, of course, a lot of people come from all over to go to our theme parks in Central Florida. So there's a lot to do. I mean, we just had the Daytona 500, I think a week and a half ago. We're going to have the PGA golf tournaments are starting, Honda Classic, Bay Hill, and then the Players Championship in Northeast Florida and Ponte Vedra Beach. We have spring training. Pitchers and catchers have reported those games are going to be starting very, very soon. And so there's a whole host of great things to do, particularly February, March, April time period. I don't know, like our population is over 22 million normally, but in this time of year, we've got to have like 25 million people here. I mean, people are everywhere. They want to be here, but there's a lot of great places to be able to go. We don't really get to do anything for vacation anymore. Back in the day, we travel around and have a good time. But whatever you like, if you like fishing, there's so many great spots. Boating, so many great spots. Golf, so many great things to do. And we're just really fortunate to live in a dynamic and good state. One thing you can do, what I do when I go around the state, we will try to stop in a lot of mom and pop places, coffee shops, other things, but a lot of just like restaurants and things, and highlighting some of the stuff that is unique to Florida. And what I do, people sometimes follow me online. They will go and they usually have really good reviews and they're thankful that I'm doing it. We come to think of, we haven't done one in a while. So maybe it's time for me to go and tee something up.
And just let me know when you go, because I'll go with you,
Yes.
because you usually find some good spots. Okay. Colleen, this is a good one that I get a lot of times when I'm out with you doing things on the road. Colleen from California writes in, what is the most important thing that we as individuals can do to help our country going forward? I get that a lot. What can we do to make a difference?
Well, I think it depends on your circumstances. I mean, I think that what we've seen with parents getting more involved in what's being taught in their kids' schools and being involved in what school boards are doing, I think that's been hugely positive, because for a while it was like, okay, these are school systems. and they're going to do what the bureaucrats and the school unions and other ideological interests want to do. What about the rights of parents? What about the best interests of the students? And so the more parents have been involved, I think the education's been stronger. I think the curriculum has improved, and it's been harder for some of these bureaucracies to smuggle in ideology and to try to pursue an agenda at the expense of your kids. So I think that that's something that I applaud parents for doing. Look, if you're involved in different things, if you want to be involved in elections and politics, the more local the election, the more bang for your buck you can have in terms of your time and effort. So, for example, yes, I ran my reelection. We had so many great volunteers, and it was really unprecedented. We're thankful for that. But what we also did is we endorsed 34 different candidates running for school board. And those are usually lower visibility races. A lot of times the money's brought in by the school unions, and they're trying to find somebody that's going to toe their ideological agenda. And so it's sometimes been hard to get good candidates to run and win. And so we tried to change that equation. And of the 34 races, we won 29 of them with candidates that were supporting parents' rights, supporting education, not indoctrination, and supporting our students. So you can make a huge difference in some of those races. And if you think about it, we've done a lot on education at the state level in Florida. We're happy to do it. We're going to do more. But if you have those school boards clicking on all cylinders, it makes it so much easier because the state physically can't address every single issue that comes up in every part of a big state like Florida on a statewide basis. So having those solid people there makes all the difference in the world.
And that kind of leads into Rachel from Virginia wrote in and she said, what is on deck for your upcoming legislative session? I think it's important to say that the legislative session hasn't started yet, but it is coming down the pike very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are going to have probably the most productive one yet. And I'd say that from my first one on, everyone says that we keep outdoing ourselves, but I think this one's going to take the cake. And so we're going to be doing a lot. I mean, one, we have persistently high inflation in this country. We've already enacted a toll relief program. So our commuters are getting a 50% reduction in their tolls. Those have just been hitting their statements this week. So more and more people are seeing that. That's $500 million. We're going to do another $1.5 billion in tax relief, particularly for families. And so in Florida, after this legislative session, raising kids is basically raising babies going to be tax-free, no tax on diapers, wipes, baby clothes, strollers, cribs, all the things that are important to raising the youngest among us. And I think that that's going to help cope with the inflation that we see. We're also doing a lot more in terms of no tax on over-the-counter pet medications, 1-year holiday on sales tax on pet food. And we're doing things like no tax on all household items under $25 just to be able to help people weather what we're seeing with the Biden inflation. We're also going to do some infrastructure because I have a growing state. We need to accelerate these projects. We're going to drop the hammer on ESG, which is basically corporate America playing politics and trying to impose an agenda through the business sphere that they can't get done through the political sphere. And we'll be one of the leaders in that. We are going to rein in the school unions. They take these dues automatically from a lot of the teachers. And so what we're going to say is no automatic deductions. If people want to write a check, they're free to do that. We're not going to have the government involved taking these dues automatically. And I think that that's going to be a very, very positive reform. We're also going to be continuing our reforms to higher education, which is something that needs to be done. And we've really led the way on that. And we've probably got about 10 or 15 other things in the hopper as well. So you're going to hear a lot of news out of Florida over the next 3 months. We're confident that we're going to end up having a tremendous session, and we're going to deliver a lot of wins for the people of Florida.
Yeah, with your historic tax relief, I joked with you, and the fact that our 6, 4, and 2-year-old is now out of diapers. So the tax relief on diapers and strollers wouldn't necessarily apply to us. So that's okay. So Dominic from Syracuse wrote in and said, what is one of the main challenges that you think America is facing today?
I think some of it is just, I think we've lost our mojo. I think that we've lost a lot of confidence. And part of that is I think you've had a lot of failures over the years, particularly, during my adult lifetime. with really a failed ruling class that we see up in Washington, D.C. They tend to bungle things. Most recently, I think bungling the COVID pandemic. I mean, you have people like Dr. Fauci and you have the corporate press pursuing a certain agenda. And now we get even more confirmation. For example, the COVID came from the Wuhan lab. Well, people were saying that earlier on. I was saying that. The press and Fauci were saying, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. You know, they said lockdowns worked and that would stop the spread. We know those failed. They said cloth masks would stop the spread. They were wrong. They said school closures would somehow not be harmful to young kids. And yet we see the difference in a state like Florida that had kids in school and these other states that lock kids out of school. They were wrong about that. They said that if you take the mRNA vax, you will not get COVID. And yet people are getting infected who've not only done the vax, but have done all these booster shots. So they were wrong about that. They were even wrong in refusing to acknowledge that you do have immunity once you get infected. They said that that didn't exist. So you saw over and over these folks failing. And I think Americans look, it's like, can we get anything right as a country? And I think what we show in the book in Florida is that, you know what? We fought all these people that have been so instrumental in doing so many things that have weakened our country. We fought them every step of the way, and we've beat them. And we've delivered results for our state in really record-breaking fashion, such that people are trying to get here from all over the country and actually all over the world. So the message, I think, of the book is an optimistic one. We can do it. We've done it in Florida. Other states can do it. And I think the country can do it as well.
And that was the last question, is what do you hope that people will get from the book? What message do you hope will resonate? And what will it send?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to what I said, I think it's an optimistic message. I also think that I talk about just the approach to leadership and kind of how we get things done. One of the things I talked about is when I became governor, I said, I am not doing polls. I am going to lead with purpose and conviction. I don't need a poll to tell me what I believe. But even getting poll, all that tells you is a static analysis of where people may be looking at an issue at that given time. It doesn't tell me if I set an agenda as a leader and I articulate a vision and execute on that vision and produce results, then what would the poll say? That's really what matters. So I really believe that a strong leader doesn't respond to public opinion as much as moves to shape public opinion. And I think that that's what we've done time and time again here in the state of Florida. And the thing is, we have results now to where you could say, yes, we've produced all these results for the state. Number one, fastest growing state. Number one, net in-migration. Number one in economic freedom, one of the lowest tax burdens in the country, one of the lowest debt burdens in the country, record budget surplus, all these different things, unemployment rate far below the national average, way more people employed today than pre-pandemic, which is not true for every state. So you have all those, and that's important, and that's what it's all about. But the people responded in record fashion and vindicated our style of leadership. And I think that that's a great thing. And I think other people in other states can look at this model and say, you know what, that's really the way to do. Boldness is your friend. Don't be timid. Don't be on defense. Go out, say what you believe, stand with what you believe, and never back down.
All right. Where do people get the book?
You can go to DeSantisSignBook.com. And there are copies. I've signed some here today. I've signed a lot more in the weeks leading up to this. And so hopefully you enjoy it and are able to make use of it as a collectible.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, this is John Acuff, New York Times best-selling author of 7 books and someone who's done a live signing. If you like the one you just watched, make sure you check out our YouTube channel. It's full of amazing authors having great conversations and signing books for viewers just like you. So make sure you subscribe, and thanks for watching today.